Pokemon Scarlet and Violet added a lot to the Pokemon formula, but one overshadowed feature was the ability to jump. In older Pokemon games, you could only really jump when you were going down a ledge, but now you can jump anywhere you want while exploring Paldea with your ride Pokemon. Chances are you jumped a lot while playing through Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and needed to jump in order to reach certain areas or find certain items, but can you beat Pokemon Scarlet without jumping at all? I don't think anybody besides me has asked this question before, but let's see. I won't be climbing or flying either, and will be limiting my use on Koraidon as much as possible, meaning we will be slowly walking through the region and probably having to fall a lot to reach certain areas. I guess this is technically a Pokemon challenge video too, and one thing that makes this challenge unique is that actual battling and Pokemon stuff doesn't really apply here, and we're just walking around. Saying it out loud sounds a lot less exciting than I initially thought, and I honestly don't even know if this is possible. We don't get Koraidon for a little while, so we can do the intro no problem. I name ourselves Land instead of the usual Sea that I go with, since our feet will be on land at pretty much all times, and I pick Fuecoco as our starter. I figure cats like to jump, so there goes Sprigatito, ducks like to fly, so no Quaxley, and alligators don't do either of those things, as far as I know, so it's the best choice. I'm going to focus on just the main gyms for now, and then go to the Team Star bases and Titan bases after. Getting to Cortando to fight Katie's gym was very straightforward, literally, and the same goes for Artisan, as you can reach them both very easily from the school. That is to be expected, of course, since they are the first two towns you're supposed to go to. But on the way, we did run into Arvin at some point here, but I'm not focusing on the Titans just yet, so we'll just ignore Arvin, a lot like his mom has been doing. Levincia is also mostly a straight road from Artisan, however we did cross a little bit of water on the beach towards the end there. This isn't technically swimming, and we didn't have to get on our Koraidon to even do it, but it is a lot slower just walking through this really shallow water. I think there might be a bridge somewhere to get across this lake too, but going to the beach just works fine too. So now that's 3 badges out of the way and 0 jumps, and I haven't even rode on our Koraidon at all yet. This does make the game feel a lot slower than it normally is, since we're just walking. This is kind of like a metaphor for real life. We can rush and run around and jump around on Koraidon and see everything very quickly, or we can slowly walk around and slowly take everything in and enjoy the glitchy landscape of Paldea and walk all the way around these hills instead of jumping up them, which would have been a lot quicker. Now I am allowing myself to use the flying taxis to go back to places that we've already been to, which is sort of flying, but we aren't controlling it. And we aren't using it to go somewhere new and just going somewhere we've already been, so I think it's fine. We end up going back to Cortando for a pretty long journey to Cascarafa. We have to travel west and spiral up this lake, which has a bridge, go past the Bombardier Titan, and across another bridge, then follow the path past Yakumo's base, and finally pass into Cascarafa. Now the desert near here connects up to Porto Marinada very nicely. Then from here, we have to take a longer route to get around to Medali. Medali is close to Cascarafa on the map, but we can't jump over these ledges, so we have to go near Casaroya Lake and cross 2 bridges to walk into Medali, making that journey a lot longer than it needed to be. This already brings us up to 5 gym badges and 0 jumps, and now we have to travel to the Glaciado Mountain in order to fight Rhyme and Grusha, and also make it to the back of the mountain to ride on Chanseys near the Team Star base. In fact, there's actually a lot of things you have to go to around or in the Glaciado Mountain. Now I needed to go to the back of the mountain to grind, since I'm kind of doing 2 challenges in one here. First, we have this no jumping challenge, and since it requires not actually battling, I'm doing another battling challenge, which is a video that should be out shortly after this one, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on that one. I'll show the route that I took to get through the mountain sped up here, since every other time I've played through Scarlet and Violet, I just kept jumping up the mountains with my ride Pokemon until I got where I needed to be. I honestly didn't think it would be possible to just walk up this mountain. It would be too steep, or we'd have to use our ride Pokemon to jump. But there's actually a short cave on the western part of the mountain that brings us up to the snowy part, and we have to carefully hug the edge of the mountain and make sure we don't go to any part that's too steep, since we start gliding down at a weird angle. There's a waterfall around here that we can kind of abuse that weird slide to get through, and although it looked really weird, it worked for me to get to the other side of the mountain. I made it to Glaciado City first, so we can come back here later to get that badge, and I definitely took an unintended route to get to Monteverna, since I walked up slopes that were way too steep, slid around a ton, kept falling, and then made it to Monteverna at a weird angle behind the stage here. I then did a similar thing to get to the back part of the mountain and just fell all the way down to get the Chancing Grinding area, which also gets us to the Team Star Ferry base that's right next to it. The last main town we have to reach is Alfornada, and this one is pretty tricky. It's tricky even if you allow yourself to jump or climb on your ride Pokemon, since you can just head into the cave towards the left side of the map and jump or climb your way to the top. I had to take a route that wasn't too obvious looking at the map, but I'll show it here sped up, which required me to wrap all the way around almost towards the middle of the map and through another short cave that I didn't even know existed. I went through most of the West Province over here, walked up these really narrow rocks, and found my way into the Alfornada Cavern, which surprisingly didn't require any jumps or climbing when we entered it from this angle. When I first played the game, I relied heavily on jumping to get here and got lost a lot, and although it is tedious and takes a lot longer than it would if you were to climb, you can get here without jumping at all. So that's all of the gyms, and now for the Team Star bases. We already made it near the ferry one and can take the taxi to the Pokemon Center near it, so that's not a problem. Then the fire and dark ones we passed along the way pretty early on as well. The poison base and fighting base are a bit trickier to get to though. The obvious way to get to the poison one is to fly to Zapopico, then just climb over this little mountain range here, but we of course can't do that. I couldn't really find a way to access it from the right side of the map here since the lake was in the way, so I ended up going back onto Glaciado Mountain, sliding down around the back towards the right side to make it to this Pokemon Center over near the Tag Tree Thicket. From here we can head south and fall down a ton of ledges and make it to this part of the map that leads into a small bridge right near the poison base. The fighting base was also a bit tricky, but since we already made it all the way here, it wasn't as hard as the poison base, so we can just go to the Pokemon Center that we passed by and wrap through the forest and through this weird swamp area that eventually leads to a smaller grassy area with the Team Star fighting base. So that's all 8 gym badges and all of Starfall Street without jumping, climbing, flying, or even swimming for that matter, or riding Koraidon at all. A lot of the Titans we pass along the way we can locate pretty easily, like Cloth, Bombardier, and Donphan. Bombardier was a bit annoying because we couldn't use our ride Pokemon, and if you just walk up this ledge here and get hit by a rock, you have to go all the way back to the start, but we can outmaneuver the rocks and get to the top anyway. For Orthworm, I remember jumping a lot to get to it and jumping while tracking it down in the fights, but we can actually get there pretty easily through Levincia. For the fight where you have to chase it down, you can also just walk around and go up these slopes to fight it rather than jumping, although jumping is a lot faster and probably what they intended you to do anyway. This only leaves the Dragon Titan fight, and as much as I tried to make this a run where we didn't even use our ride Pokemon Koraidon at all, there's unfortunately no way to get to this island in the lake without swimming. This is also really the only point in the game where I found that you actually needed Koraidon at all. At this point though, since we have all of the other Koraidon upgrades, the game automatically puts you on Koraidon when you've touched the water instead of just making you respawn elsewhere if you fall in the water before. In hindsight, I think they might have done this all on purpose, since some people might not even realize they can swim until they fall into the water after defeating the Titan that lets you swim. They also must have purposefully structured the Paldea region in a way where you never needed to jump or climb to complete any of the main story elements at all, since there might be people out there who don't even realize you can just press plus to ride on a Pokemon. You definitely do need to climb or swim or jump in order to get some items though. This might sound silly, but I was actually surprised this was possible, since while playing the game normally, I rely on jumping and climbing a lot. I didn't even have to use that glitch where you can throw out one of your Pokemon at a wild Pokemon and then teleport closer to them to skip some areas that some people have done in other runs. Now we still have the Elite Four and stuff, but that's just right near the school, and reaching Area 0 is really close to Medali if you just follow the path up this little hill. Then in Area 0, you can't even ride on Koraidon, so you don't have to worry about not jumping. And after fighting the professor for the first time, the only time we really have to use Koraidon at all is in the final fight where we battle another Koraidon. And that's the end of the game. So, can you beat Pokemon Scarlet and Violet without jumping? Yes, you can. It makes the run much slower and a lot more tedious. I have no idea why anyone would want to do this, or if anybody else out there even asked the question if it was possible besides me, but there we go.